not one from 7th grade, it was actually one he read in 5th grade. And it was the first time he'd ever read a book that he could remember with a girl main character. And he talked about how when he chose it, he didn't know if he was going to like it because of that. But then he realized, he read it, that it didn't really matter at all. And there's a number of other, one boy who claimed that there's most boys are not going to read a book or like a book at least, that has like a love story in it. And then one of his classmates reminded him that he had read Flipped by Wyndham Wonder and really loved it. It was one of his favorite books of the year. And so after this, he was like, oh, yeah, and he kind of changed it. He realized, over the middle of that discussion that he was wrong about that. So, and then this one this was kind of the closing of all of the character and the plot discussions that we had. Was that last one there? Just looking at which of those elements plays a bigger role in whether they like the book or not. Yeah. And then some of our concluding ones, which honestly these are some of my favorites, are some of the ones that come at the end of the year. Talking about how books affect our emotions. This number 2 was one, it didn't quite go as I had hoped. I realized that a lot of my students, they're not familiar enough with like stereotypes and stuff, that it was hard for some of them to talk about. So then the group who didn't talk about it that first week, we went through more examples, but then the product that they all used like those in their because they didn't know any others. So it didn't quite go as well as I was hoping. This one here, this is the one I mentioned we watched on Tuesday. We watched her TED Talk that she did on this topic, and then we read parts of Rubin Sims Bishop's article the next day. Next year, I will probably split this into 2 sets. Like I wrote a paragraph about each of these, but it was a lot to kind of talk about all in one day. So next year, I'll probably split it into 2 and talk about books that were mirrors for them first, and then windows are after that. And then our last 2, I'm looking at how fiction reveals truths about our world, and then the last one, I talk about the book that they think will be the most memorable to them. Now, if I wasn't doing letter essays, I could fit in a number, like quite a few more. And last year also, with the first year that we were doing our assessment conferences like we were, I lost a couple of weeks because of that, but I won't. So hopefully this year I'll be able to get to a couple more topics, and a few of them I'll change and replace as well. We won't do all those same ones. And that's actually my next 2 slides then, is just, these are some topics that I would like. I don't know if we'll get to all of these, but just some that, a few of them are Glenn Powers topics that he has on a list of his that they've sometimes talked about. Others are ones just at various times. Like I've started thinking a lot about this, like the one about stereotypes actually came from one of my sessions at Nerd Camp last year, and I was like, oh, that'd be a good roundtable topic. So I try to be aware of and just pick up on, oh hey, that's something that we could talk about in one of these discussions. I really am interested. This is one that this is one of Glenn's that I'm interested in talking about a little bit. There's a few more on the next page. Just a few more that are ones that I would like to. These are 2 that I wanted to talk about this year, and we just ran out of time at the end of the year to discuss. But yeah, I think it's something that I've only begun, doing 1 year, I've only kind of begun to scratch the surface in terms of the potential of, we could talk about a lot of different topics that I never knew quite how to fit into our reading workshop before, and now this has given us an opportunity where, hey, we have a framework in place already, so I don't have to do anything new. It's just, hey, that becomes our roundtable topic for this week. And so that's one of the things I really like, is just kind of thinking about what are other things that might be worth discussing. And that's something, if any of you begin to use these in any way, I would love to hear, send however any of those ones, I'll put it back up on the screen then, but I would love to hear other topics that you come up with that your classes discuss, because, like I said, I think I've only begun to kind of scratch the surface of the types of things that we can talk about with the books that we read. I think that is, I don't know if we... Yeah, I don't know really. By the time we get, this is over at 2:05 anyway, right? Yeah, so we won't have time quite for this. I'll finish. I'll just put this back up. If you weren't in here at the beginning, if you go here, this will have all of the slides and all of the other handouts. A couple of the examples that are filled out in the packet are scanned, but I'll put all of that stuff will be here. And I'll post on, as like I said, also the document where there's descriptions of all the different sessions. I'll put those on there as well. So.
Do you have reading requirements for your kids? I heard you say you note like what page they're on. Do they have requirements for each week and workshop you need? Like what sort of reading requirements?
They do not. So a lot of, I have at times, but a lot of their, their goals, so like these were some of their roundtable goals, but in terms of stuff like that, there is like, so for first quarter, their homework is to read for 30 minutes each night.
Okay.
And that's pretty much it. But then anything else in terms of, okay, if they're reading the same types of books all the time or whatever, that comes in their goals that they create.
Okay.
So